Welcome everybody to Monster Monday pre-show. I am DM Gallibond. Music you are listening to tonight comes to us from Syrinscape. This is actually music in Syrinscape from the Greenest in Flames section. Greenest in Flames is and of course now it ends because this doesn't have a continuous looping music on this one. But it's nice, relaxing, soothing music. So I'm going to manually restart it here. This is something called travel music from Greenest in Flames, which is part of the Tyranny of Dragons section. So we're trying out in all the streams, we're trying out Syrinscape. It worked out pretty well in the game streams on Thursday night and on Saturday night. So I think we're going to continue using it, and I think we will, we'll have more options with Syrinscape going forward. I'm going to try to eventually incorporate some of the sound effects when we have combats and things of that nature. So, also remember to go check out Mo over at the Tabletop Bellhop. TabletopBellhop.com. Mo is the OG when it comes to all things tabletop games, card games, board games, party games, you name it. RPGs, if you can play it on a tabletop, then Mo has you covered. So go see him at TabletopBellhop.com. And we'll get started here at the top of the hour in just a couple of minutes. I'm getting my monitor set up here so that I can watch for any feedback from chat that comes in. Hope everybody is having a good Monday evening. I'm gonna grab a quick drink here. Down just a little bit. Welcome everybody to Monster Monday. My name is DM Gallibond, and this is Monster Monday for November 8th, 2021. And tonight on Monster Monday, we are going to be looking at a very interesting creature indeed. We are going to be looking at the Tomb Tapper. Before we get started, just want to remind you that the music you're hearing is from the Syrinscape application. Music for all of your tabletop games, fantasy games, sci-fi, RPGs, all kinds of stuff. They've got great different soundscapes. I'm trying out one from Greenest in Flames, which is something they made for the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. It's just sort of travel music that they have. The only drawback about this soundscape is that the music plays and then there's a break, and then it starts playing again, and there's a break, and then it starts playing again, and there's a break. Some of the other ones have non-stop music. It would be nice if they had it on this one, but we'll survive. All right, and just a reminder to go check out Mo over at the TabletopBellhop.com. He's the OG when it comes to all things tabletop games, card games, board games, party games, tabletop RPGs. If you can play it on a table, Mo has you covered. Alright, well, let's go ahead and take a look at this tomb tapper, shall we? We will tap this keg and get this one started. Ha ha ha. Okay, so the tomb tapper. Tomb tapper appears as a tall, naked, sexless, hairless humanoid with hard, smooth, blue-gray skin, claws that can dig through solid rock, and great toothed mouths in their bellies. Their featureless heads have earned them the nickname the Faceless. Now, this description comes from 2nd edition because that's where they first entered D&D in a source book, but they were actually introduced as far back as 1st edition, but they were introduced as an article in a Dragon magazine. And since I don't have an exhaustive catalog of the Dragon magazines, I don't personally own the source, but I do have it on good authority from one of the websites that I researched that's where they first appeared. Alright, so then in 2nd edition we get a little bit of a different description of them. This ebon giant stands more than 15 feet tall. Its face is a blank, smooth oval, and its body is smooth and featureless except for an enormous maw that gapes in the center of its torso. It wears no armor or clothing, but it carries a huge two-handed hammer. And that is a description of the Tomb Tapper from 3rd edition. Now this picture that you're seeing right here, this is from the 2nd edition source that where it appears. Alright, and then in 5th edition, it's introduced again, wrought from the fusion of magic and elemental earth. Each of the sexless, hairless warriors stands 15 to 21 feet tall and possesses a lust for magic, an inherited memory composed of recollections from the soul's sacrifice in their creation, and an inane hatred for non-human spellcasting creatures. That's 5th edition. Well, that's a really strange creature. And yes, this gives you a little bit of an idea of where it comes from, because in 2nd edition the source book is Netheril, Empire of Magic. Because yes, these are creatures that have their origins in the ancient Netherese Empire. It's that empire that existed in Phaerimm long before the dawn of D&D proper. The ancient civilization where mages had floating flying cities that for some reason collapsed. And actually, as we'll find out, tomb tappers are somehow related to that collapse. Alright, so now this is a picture of the tomb tapper from 5th edition. This is the image you will find if you look for the tomb tapper in D&D Beyond, or if you find it in its source, which is Rime of the Frost Maiden. So Rime of the Frost Maiden, which is one of the more recent campaigns that D&D has released, this is where they brought back this monster from long, long ago, from the ancient Netherese Empire. Looks like it kind of has a shark's jaws there in its belly. Very, very disturbing. Okay, Tomb Tapper lore. The Netherese Arcanus who created these creatures called them Thalid, which literally means faceless. Tomb Tappers can dig through earth and rock with their claws or use their metal sledgehammers to shatter rock when needed. They absorb water through their skin and crush rock with their jaws to extract mineral sustenance. They can also digest iron from blood and marrow if mineral-rich rock is unavailable. That is lore about them in 5th edition. Now from 3rd edition, it says Thalid are driven by their ancient imperatives to hoard magic, and they often tunnel into forgotten crypts to pillage their treasures, hence their common name of Tomb Tappers. Nor are these creatures above robbing adventurers of their magic items. Thallid revere magic to the point that they usually conceal their prizes in hidden vaults instead of making use of them. Okay, interesting. Interesting. And from 2nd edition lore about them, wrought from the fusion of magic elemental earth and the bodies of 9 volunteers from the poor districts of Netheril cities, the archwizards created the first Thallid. These faceless warriors were given a lust for magic, an inherited memory giving access to the recollections of their ancestors, an ideology of the purity of magic, and an insane hatred for non-human spellcasting creatures. Okay, well, why? Well, we're going to find out a little bit more about that. But first, now, you might be wondering, well, what manner of creature are these? They appear to be made of flesh, and yet they were created by ancient Netherese arcanists. Well, they are in fact constructs. And this image right here, this is an image from the 3rd edition source book Lost Empires of Phaerimm, and that is what the 3rd edition version of a Thallid or a Tomb Tapper looks like. So they are constructs. They are made, not born. Some are programmed by their creators to follow a simple set of instructions, while others are imbued with sentience and capable of independent thought. The golems are the iconic constructs. Many creatures native to the outer plane of mechanists, such as modrons, are constructs shaped from the raw material of the plane by the will of more powerful creatures. So yes, the Tomb Tapper is a construct, and it's that kind of construct that has it's got programming in terms of its it follows a set of instructions, basically to seek out and destroy non-human spellcasters because of how they were made. But they are created in part from living beings that sacrifice themselves for these things to be made. And so they do have a form of sentience and memory. But as we'll see, it can be a little bit tough to tap into that memory, no pun intended, with a name like Tomb Tapper. Alright, so now we are going to go and take a look at the mechanical features of Tomb Tappers. And I said they got their start in 1st edition. And really the only way I could find out any information on that is going to the Forgotten Realms wiki. So that is going to be our first stop when we go and look at information on the Tomb Tapper. So the Tomb Tapper does have its own article in the Forgotten Realms wiki, and this is an image. This blue scale image here is an image of the Tomb Tapper from the 1st edition source book, or 1st edition Dragon Magazine article, I should say. Tomb Tappers were 15-foot tall intelligent constructs designed by the ancient Netherese Empire to defend it against the depredations of the Phaerimm. Their existence can be traced back to the very beginning of the Shadowed Age of Netheril's history, when a group of arcanists created to seek out the source of the magical drain that was beginning to reach across Netheril. Now, what are Phaerimm, you ask? Well, this is not about Phaerimm, and I don't think Phaerimm have been added into 5th edition yet, so we probably won't ever do a Monster Monday on them, but we can go ahead and take a quick peek over here and see what Phaerimm are. Phaerimm are magic grubs, or thornbacks. They are creatures from the outer realms that are highly intelligent, but with a morphology, their bodies look like slugs. Then they have a big mouth like a lamprey, and they have 4 arms with which they grab prey and pull it into their mouths. They're also incredibly malevolent and highly intelligent. They are wholly evil and sadistic, ambitious and malicious creatures that worked only for their own individual causes. They delight in bringing pain to others and would gladly erase all other beings from existence, save for the fact that they would lack slaves to torture for sport if they did so. They have incredibly powerful, mind-affecting magical spells. And they're so strong, the mind-controlling spells are so strong they can control nearly any creature, including powerful ones such as beholders and mind flayers. And negative side effect of Phaerimm magic is that it drained moisture from the surrounding area. Extensive use of this magic led to the creation of the infamous Anarok Desert. Okay, now, it was to combat those creatures that the Netherese Arcanists created Tomb Tappers. So Tomb Tappers basically were instructed to go hunt down and destroy those Phaerimm. And that is one reason why they were created as constructs, because as you know, one of the properties of constructs is, and always has been, they are immune to all kinds of mind control spells. So they cannot be controlled. However, they do have a sentience, which means that that sentience can be detected. So, unlike most constructs, the Tomb Tapper is one that you can use a spell like Detect Thoughts on, and you can detect its thoughts, but you cannot use any kind of control creature or thing on it. So you cannot do a hold monster or control monster or anything that is a charm effect or a control effect on a sentient creature. You can't use that. But that is a little bit about them from their earliest days. So in first edition, they communicated by means of humming sound created by skin vibrations, a language partly understood by mind flayers, and by telepathy. They saw via sonar that was accurate up to 440 feet, enabled them to locate invisibility and displaced creatures, and made them immune to visual illusions and other vision-related spells. And so you can't use Hold Monster or Gesh or any of those other things. And in some editions, they have the abilities to animate rock every 2 hours and detect magic at will. And they can attack with their claws or that wicked-looking hammer. And we'll see more detail about that as we go through the editions. Alright, so here is the Tomb Tapper from 2nd edition from the Netheril Empire of Magic. They're highly intelligent, lawful neutral, armor class of -2, movement of 10, and burrow. Burrow speed, yes, they are a creature, a construct with a humanoid morphology that is able to burrow through solid rock. You starting to get ideas how you might use these? I hear you. I hear those gears turning over there. Alright, hit dice, 8 plus 8. Thaco of 13. Number of attacks, 3 or 1. So the 3 is the claw and the bite from that huge belly mouth. The 1 attack would be if it decides to whack you with the maul. They're huge creatures, 15 to 21 feet tall. And they're not natural, of course. And Tomb tappers receive their name from their habit of burrowing into depths to plunder tombs, temples, and caves in search of magical items which they bear off. They usually try to seize magic from beings they encounter. Magic is sacred to the tomb tappers. They never use any magic gain, instead choosing to protect and venerate such items. Tappers spend their long lives in the search for the source of all magic, which they believe to be hidden deep in the earth. They are in awe of earth elementals, believing them to be created at this mysterious source, and are reluctant to attack them. So that is about Tomb Tappers from 2nd edition. Now let's go and look at 3rd edition. Hey, Fork Puff, good to see you over there. Alright, so the Tomb Tapper in 3rd edition is a huge construct. 16 D10 plus 40 for the hit points. Speed 40 feet, burrow 10 feet, armor class 25. Base attack of plus 12, base grapple of plus 30. The attack, they can attack with their +1 throwing returning maul. Yes, that big two-handed maul, they can actually throw it. And that's something that is kept in 5th edition, and we're going to see a little bit about that. +2 or +22 melee attack, 3d8 plus 16 damage, critical on a 19 or 20 for 3 times its normal damage. Its full attack in 3rd edition is +1 throwing returning maul, and then a bite, or 2 slams and a bite. And then you can, it's got a +12 when it attacks with the maul in melee, and +14 when it attacks at range. And its reach is 15 feet. So then they're called Thallid, or ancient constructs, first created many centuries ago by the mighty Arcanists of the Netheril. Tomb Tapper is a faceless being, stands about 16 feet tall, and weighs 16,000 pounds. Each one carries, so it weighs about as much as 4 Buicks. So they understand common netherese and undercommon, but they cannot speak. They can communicate with others using telepathy, but they rarely say more than "drop your magic items and run away." Tomb Tappers make good use of their tremor sense and burrowing abilities to approach potential enemies from all angles, often emerging from rock in unexpected places. Yes, remember, these things can burrow. So, interesting way you can use it to attack your party if you are the DM. And then there's some lore on the construction of Thallid. While the secrets of Thallid construction have long been lost to the world, the Tomb Tappers know the secret of making more of their kind. Usually choose to replace destroyed individuals, but they never increase their total number. 5 Thallid cooperating with each other can fashion a new Tomb Tapper in 100 days. Exact requirements of the ritual are not known, but the Tomb Tappers must fashion a new individuals from stone, iron, and at least 10,000 gold pieces worth of adamantine. So, yes, they are expensive to replace, but they have enough sentient and enough intelligence that they are able to reproduce by constructing more of their own kind. Self-replicating constructs. Alright, and now we come up to the present day, to the Tomb Tappers in 5th edition. Alright, it's a huge construct, armor class 17, 207 hit points, speed of 30 feet, burrow of 10 feet. They are resistant to lightning, immune to cold and fire, condition immunities to being charmed or frightened. They have blind sight out to 240 feet, and they are blind beyond this radius. They understand common and undercommon, but they can't speak. They have telepathy out to 60 feet. They are CR10 monster. Now, Petrified Death. When it reaches 0 hit points, it turns into a lifeless stone statue. Anything it's wearing or carrying is not transformed. So, sense magic. The Tomb Tapper senses magic within 30 feet of it and can use an action to pinpoint the location of any creature, object, or area in that range that bears magic. This sense penetrates barriers but is blocked by a thin sheet of lead. They are tunnelers that can burrow through solid rock at half its burrowing speed and leave a 10-foot wide, 20-foot tall tunnel in its wake. They don't require food or sleep. They make 2 melee attacks with a sledgehammer or with their claws. If it attacks the same creature with both of its claws, it can pull that creature within 5 feet of its mouth and make a bite attack against it. So in 5th edition, if they're going melee without their weapon, it's claw and claw, and if both of those hit, then it gets a bite. But if only one of the claws hit or neither of the claws hit, then it can't get the bite. So plus 10 for the claw attacks, 3d6 plus 6 slashing damage, and then plus 10 to attack for the bite, 3d10 plus 6 slashing damage for the bite. Then the sledgehammer. Well, it's also a plus 10. It can use it melee or ranged. Alright, melee, or either one, it gets a plus 10 to attack. And the throw, it has a normal range of 30 feet to throw that maul, but it can actually throw it as far as 120 feet away. So you have to be really far away from this Tomb Tapper to be out of range of that maul. So it can hurl that maul a very good distance, and because it's a returning maul, it automatically comes back to the Tomb Tapper and into its hands at the end of its turn. Or if it has used its hands to make melee attacks, the maul appears at its feet. And the other thing about this maul is it can choose whether the maul deals bludgeoning damage or force damage. So that is something that can be of a concern to some parties, because there's very few things in D&D 5e that will give you resistance or immunity to force damage. And in fact, there's like 1 or 2 magic items that will do it. Even for all of their vaunted resistances, we were looking at this because it happened in my Sunday game. We have a barbarian who went Totem of the Bear, and once you get to a certain level with Totem of the Bear as a barbarian, you have resistance to just about every kind of damage type in the game except for force damage. That's the one thing that you don't get resistance to. So if you have somebody that has a bunch of resistances and they go up and they start fighting against a Tomb Tapper, well, it can just choose to make its hammer attacks deal force damage instead of bludgeoning damage, and it just bypasses that resistance. So it makes it a very, very nasty foe. They created by the Netherese, and they sent the Thallid or Tomb Tappers into the Underdark to exterminate their enemies, most notably the magic-devouring funnel-shaped creatures known as Phaerimm. Other creatures targeted by the Thallid include Mind Flayers, Darrow, Drow, and Duergar. Tomb Tappers communicate with one another by means of humming and sound created by skin vibrations. Received their colloquial name for their habit of burrowing in the depths of plunder tombs, temples, and caves in search of magic items. And again, they don't use the magic items. They take them to vaults and store them. So, that is the mechanics of the Tomb Tapper. Now we're going to go back and take a look at the and a little bit more about how you might use these guys in your game. Okay, so how could you use a Tomb Tapper in encounter? It's a CR10 monster, so that means if your party consists of 5 PCs that are either level 6 or 7, throwing them up against a single Tomb Tapper is going to be a hard encounter. If you have a level 8 or 9 party and throw them up against a Tomb Tapper, that's going to be a medium encounter. And if you can go ahead and add 1 stone defender in order to make it a hard encounter if it's a level 9 party. And for a party of level 10 to 13, going against a single Tomb Tapper is an easy encounter. At level 13, you can add a second Tomb Tapper to make it a hard encounter if that's what you want to design. Alright, so now if you're players and you find yourself fighting against a Tomb Tapper, well, what are some tactics that you can do? First of all, be nimble. Tomb Tappers may seem like melee enemies since they have those claws and that mouth and that huge maul. They can throw the maul up to 120 feet and deal 66 damage. Resistance to bludgeoning damage doesn't help because the Tomb Tapper can decide if it wants its maul to deal force or bludgeoning damage. And just like Thor's hammer, the maul returns by magic to the Tomb Tapper at the end of its turn. Another tactic, wrap your magic items in lead. Tomb Tappers can sense the presence of magic items within 30 feet and can pinpoint the source of magic by concentrating as an action. However, this detection is blocked by a thin sheet of lead. So, if you... yes, your DM, of course your DM is using encumbrance, but if you just take the essentials that you need and you wrap everything that you own in lead, then you will be safe against Tomb Tappers. A sheet of lead in D&D is the D&D equivalent of wearing a tinfoil hat. It will save you from magic detection. Alright, and forget using mind control. So most constructs are immune to mind control, and Tomb Tappers were created specifically to battle against malicious, intelligent, slug-like spellcasters called Phaerimm that specialized in mind control magic. So, they were specifically designed to counter any kind of mind control magic that could be thrown at it, so just forget about it. Don't even try to use mind control on these things. Even though they have a sentience and they have an intelligence, you can't touch it with mind control magic. Alright, now if you're behind the DM screen, how might you use Tomb Tappers? So, a Tomb Tapper can be a great surprise monster to throw at a party when they happen to be in the Underdark or searching for a magic item. And they have a nasty surprise for unwary or unexpected parties, and the ability to throw that huge maul up to 120 feet and deliver some impressive damage when doing so. They can also choose to attempt an attack with both claws against a creature in melee range. When they hit with both claws, they get to add a third free attack with a gaping maw in their midsection. And don't forget about its ability to burrow. As humanoid constructs, Tomb Tappers have a very unusual morphology for a burrowing creature. If the party is near a Tomb Tapper, it's entirely possible the monster may attack them from under the ground by reaching up with those grasping claws to clutch at a party member and then explode from the ground to deliver a bite attack the PCs won't soon forget. That would make a great D&D jump scare moment when you're walking along in a cavern and these huge claws come out and grab your mage, and then when the wizard is grabbed, the rest of this gigantic construct comes out of the ground and just pulls it right into its midsection and bites it. Yeah, that'll be a visual that your players will go, ah. If they if they like if they like you to throw weird and creepy and um, nasty creatures at them, using a Tomb Tapper may just fit the bill. Or if they dislike it and you enjoy making them squeamish, it would be a great monster to throw at them. Okay, now where would you place a Tomb Tapper in a campaign? They are guardians of magic. From the lore and history of these monsters, it's clear Tomb Tappers hoard magic and store it away to protect it from enemies of the Netheril, like the Phaerimm. This means that the presence of a group of Tomb Tappers might mean a large cache of magic items is nearby. If your party is high enough level, there may be rumors of a cache of magic, and they may be sent out by whoever is their quest giver to go and hunt down these magic items, or they may require a cache of magic items for some other job that they're going to do, and they have heard about one that might be there. Well, guess what? That cache may be guarded by several Tomb Tappers, so that could be a way of using them. Now, alternately, they are known as tomb robbers, and by their nature, subterranean Tomb Tappers are drawn to magical items. Perhaps a powerful noble or wizard or official from a temple contacts the party because a magic item of great value was stolen from the tomb of an ancestor, the tomb of a previous monarch, or the tomb of a blessed saint. And tracking that item may lead the PCs to the Tomb Tapper thief, in air quotes. You can also use them as a gateway to ancient history. So if the PCs encounter one of these bizarre creatures, it might be a way to spark an arc of a campaign that sees the party adventure into areas where there are a lot of ruins, artifacts, or surviving threats from the ancient Netherese Empire. Now, here's where something like the Detect Thoughts might come into play. If you have players who love doing things like, there's one player in the group that always likes to, during battle, use like a Detect Thoughts or something and try to get into the mind of the opponent and see what's really driving this opponent. You could slip in some of that lore from some of those surface thoughts might be surface thoughts of those people that were sacrificed to create the Tomb Tapper so many centuries ago. It might be little glimpses of Netherese life, or a little clue about some powerful Netherese item that this Tomb Tapper has recently come into contact with. Well, from its perspective recently, and who knows, what that really means. But if you want to give a breadcrumb to your players about going and kind of searching out ancient Netherese ruins, that might be a good way of doing it. Now, of course, that's a really specific use case. You would have to have that kind of party member that likes to use those Detect Thoughts either when they see a potential enemy before they engage it, or out, while they are in combat, and sort of delve into the creature's mind and see what it's thinking. So that's a potential way that you could use it there. And then finally, just use it as a creeper of the week. So if you simply like throwing creepy looking monsters at your party from time to time, Tomb Tapper is a great option that you can use. Big shark's mouth in the middle of its belly, huge maul that it can throw at people, no face at all, and just this genderless humanoid form that just goes around with no clothes, and and it's just ugh, woof, creepy, creepy, creepy. Okay. So now, what about reskinning this monster? Um, how might we think about going about reskinning? Well, there's a couple of ways we can look at this. So, as a burrowing humanoid-shaped construct, Tomb Tapper is a really rare creature. In fact, I was trying to think, and there probably are some monsters that I'm not thinking of, but I can't think of any humanoids that burrow through solid rock. Now, obviously, there are earth elemental and elemental creatures that can burrow or glide through the earth. And then there's all of the classic, purple worm and those sorts of things which burrow. And then there's the bulette, or the land shark that can burrow through and attacks by coming up from the ground. But as a humanoid morphology, humanoid shaped constructs, I can't think of any others that do that. So you could think about the properties of the monster and imagine something that has similar abilities, but perhaps a different morphology or a different type of movement. So consider taking the Tomb Tapper stat block and turn it into a creature like an alligator or crocodile that swims through the earth instead of the water and catches creatures with some digging foreclaws in order to deliver a vicious bite. So for this creature, the thrown hammer attack might become a powerful tail that can fling projectiles like boulders a long range to strike their enemies. And then alternately, you might think of an aquatic or avian humanoid construct, or doesn't even have to be a construct necessarily, that has a similar physical shape and whose special movement is flying or swimming instead of burrowing. So in that case, those creatures may not carry a large throwing weapon, but they may have a different feature that gives it a similar CR, such as spell-like abilities to affect enemies at long range, or the ability to become invisible. So imagine something that flies or that swims that can be invisible and can come right up on you and then attack you from a state of being invisible. And then, of course, as soon as it attacks, it would become visible, and you'd have to deal with it. But that would be another way of thinking about this creature, just taking its basic stat block, what it can do, and then think about, okay, I still want it to be a burrowing creature, but not a humanoid. So then maybe like it's like I said, maybe it's like an alligator and it has something like crab claws on the side of its head, and it uses those instead of the claw attack. That would be the claw attack to grab a creature, and then if it can grapple a creature with both of those claws, then it gets to deliver a vicious bite with its mouth. So that's a way of thinking about that. All right. Okay, yes. Believe it or not, this evening is back to more of a normal length of a Monster Monday. We've had a couple of really long Monster Mondays in the last few weeks, but that's because there's been a lot of really cool things going on. So I'm looking at the chat, and at the moment I don't see any questions on the Tomb Tapper. However, I'm going to go ahead and work on the wrap up, and then I will come back and check to see if you guys have any questions. All right, so I have been DM Gallibond, and this has been our Monster Monday presentation on the Tomb Tapper. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you will subscribe, follow us over on Twitch, or subscribe on Twitch, and subscribe over on YouTube. Like the stream, share this channel with your friends. Let them know about the stuff that we do here. I do have 3 other shows, and all 3 of them are back. this this weekend, starting on Thursday. Sunday we've had a little bit of a hiatus, but because the regular season is over and we have a week break before the playoff starts, um, we now have no more disruptions from Sundays because of soccer. So, my Sunday show is Walker of Waterdeep. That is a 5th edition Planeswalking campaign, and the party has just, in the last session, we just transported to a new plane. They teleported to a new plane, and the plane they have landed in is a plane that is inspired by the Magic the Gathering expansion, Arabian Nights. We're going way back to like 1993-94 to the Arabian Nights expansion. So a lot of the people that they meet and a lot of the enemies that they encounter, and perhaps even a few of the spells that they run across in some magic items are all drawn from the Arabian Nights expansion of Magic the Gathering. So join us on Sundays at 2 p.m. for that game. Then on Thursday nights, we play another 5th edition game called the Sword Coast Chronicles. This is where we are telling a homebrew story, but we're doing it by cobbling together stories from the published 5th edition campaigns. So right now they are in the storyline for Storm King's Thunder, and they are on the trail of King Hekaton. They have an ally who has a flying cloud giant castle, and they are in Waterdeep trying to see what information they can find about this mysterious ship called the Morkoth, that where they are holding King Hekaton as a captive. They discovered a couple of weeks ago that that's where he is because they talked to somebody that knows, and that person mysteriously died right after telling them the information they wanted to know. Died just as though of a massive brain hemorrhage. Blood began pouring out of his nostrils and his eye sockets and his ears, and there was a faint smell of like burning flesh. So, not sure what that was all about, but yeah, whoever has this king, maybe a bit of a dangerous people to go mess with. But of course, hey, they're a party of D&D adventurers. That's exactly what they want to do. They want to go mess with the most dangerous cats in the room. All right, and on Saturday night we are playing through the original Temple of Elemental Evil using 2nd edition D&D rules. So that's our Saturday night Greyhawk game. You can join us Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. They are just at the exterior ruins on the surface of the old temple. And in fact, they kind of got inside the grounds of the temple, and as we finished up our last session, they kind of worked their way over to that one tower that's over in the wall. If you are a fan of the old original Temple of Elemental Evil, you know what I'm talking about. They are over at that tower, and they're kind of checking that out. So you can join us Saturday night and see how that's going. I will tell you that since most of us in our games are US based, at least on the Thursday night game and perhaps on all 3 games, we will not be playing on Thanksgiving. And depending on how many people are hosting family or traveling to be with family or whatever, it just may not make sense to play any of the games that weekend. So we will be here for the next few weeks in all 3 of the games, and then the only disruptions will be once MLS finally releases what day and time our our first playoff game is, and then of course if we are fortunate enough to win, we have to see week by week as the playoffs go on to see whether we're going to have a game or not, because my team's in the playoffs and they have a game. I got to be glued to that game. All right. You can follow us over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Gallibond, and on YouTube you can look for DM Gallibond on YouTube. And also we have a Patreon where you can go ahead and help us out if you want to help us do more stuff. All right, go back and take a look to see if there's any questions. All right, don't see any questions right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this music up a little bit, and I am going to look for someone that is streaming some D&D, and we'll go ahead and we will raid them. So let me go to the credits page. Okay, let's go raid Johnny Black 137. Okay. All right, so do this. All right. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out tonight. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that we will see you next time, and hope we'll see you in some of our other streams. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.